All right, y'all. First and foremost, give all praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the Son of Hamashiach, who some call Yahweh Shai Yeshua, Yehoshua. We mostly know Yasha Yah. We mostly know as Jesus Christ. Um, I told you we was gonna briefly speak on that brother who shot Martin Luther King's mother. Um, walked into Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta. A few years, maybe 6, 7 years, I think it said, after the assassination of Martin Luther King, a brother, a Hebrew Israelite, and that's what we're determining. Is brother a Hebrew Israelite from the information that we're going to go through today. The alleged Hebrew Israelite, um, he walks in there, in murders, tries to shoot the father, said the mother would be a little easier, and shoots and kills Martin Luther King's mother. I think he killed the deacon also. So he was just sitting there, just guns ablaze. I seen some videos. I won't show them, but I seen some news clippings also. Where it's not news clippings, but videos right outside. The news interviewing people right after he did it, and them being in hysterical and crying and just trying to understand what actually happened. But I have found the articles here. They've been redigitized. You see the picture there. That is a brother named Hananiah E. Israel. I don't know if I can zoom this thing in. Nah, don't look like it. Wait. Magnify image. Okay. But that's the brother there. Conspiracy slaying of Miss King reported. What it says, reported findings, I guess. Oh man. Anyway. So we're gonna read that article there. It's 2 articles that we're gonna read. Gonna run through them real quick, and then we got a video. Alright, from some of the brothers. Because that brother Hananiah E. Israel, he's not the one that did the shooting, but he is the teacher of the brother who actually did the shooting. I think his name was Wayne, Mr. Chenault. Wayne Chenault. He was his initial teacher. But let's see what we get into. But the video we gonna watch, that same brother who's the initial teacher actually taught some other people, and there is a school called the House of Israel in Cincinnati. And Vocab alone was speaking with them, and they were giving their take on some of the things, even to the point of saying that they have the reel to reel of the FBI video of them interviewing one of their late teachers, the teacher of their teacher, Hananiah E. Israel. Cincinnati, July 3rd, a man who calls himself Hananiah E. Israel says he is a spiritual teacher. Said here today that Mr. Marcus Wayne Chenault, that's the one who killed Martin Luther King's mother, had been one of his pupils, to whom he had revealed his beliefs that black ministers are among the main oppressors of black people. Mr. Chenault had been arrested and charged in the slaying of Miss Martin Luther King Sr. I don't know why they write that like that. Miss Martin Luther King Sr. last Sunday. His attorney, Randolph Bacote, said in an interview today that Mr. Chenault had not mentioned Mr. Israel to him, but had told him that all his religious beliefs came through revelation. So Mr. Chenault didn't mention Mr. Israel. He did not mention him. He said all his beliefs came through a revelation, that he just received his revelation. Mr. Israel, who lives in one room on the second floor of a house in Avondale, mostly black residential areas, said in a 2-hour interview today that Mr. Chenault came to him last March and asked him to unscramble his mind. He said that was a college kid. He said that was a college kid who didn't know anything. Mr. Israel said while sitting at a table on which rested 2 Bibles and his own literature. The boy was brilliant. All I had to give him was the key to open his mind. Mr. Israel, whose legal name is Stephen Hallman, said that most of what he described as revelations that he passed on to Mr. Chenault resulted from long research in libraries and reinterpretation of the Bible from a black viewpoint. Although Mr. Israel has spent many years trying to spread these teachings, which he described as coming from the Mighty One, he said that Mr. Chenault was one of the first to seek him out to ask for clarifications. They had about 5 meetings and numerous telephone conversations, he said. Little interest found. Only a few people had expressed interest in his ideas, Mr. Israel said, reduced to essentials. Mr. Israel's beliefs that are that the Israelites of the Old Testament were black and that the God of the Old Testament is black. To punish the black Israelites for past sins, he said he believes that God sent blacks into 400 years of slavery in North America. Among the key agents in this punishment, he said, are black ministers whom he caged, false shepherds keeping black people in ignorance. They will be destroyed, he said, when the punishment is met. Mr. Israel, who said he based much of his beliefs on the teachings of the Old Testament prophet Jeremiah, said that he was not sure whether Mr. Chenault had shot Miss King while divinely inspired. But he added that he did not believe that Mr. Chenault had acted out of insanity. Mr. Israel, who answers the phone with the Hebrew word shalom and keeps a kosher household, does not attend any formal house of worship. He said that Mr. Chenault had never expressed to him any intention of doing violence. He was a friendly, jovial type. He said the type of fellow who always had a big smile. Shocked at news. Mr. Israel, who is 68 years old and lives on a small Social Security pension and income from odd jobs as a handyman, said when a friend told him of the shooting of Miss King and Mr. Chenault's arrest, he was shocked and flabbergasted. But he added that he felt no remorse about the slaying because the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had been told by black Hebrews on one of his trips to Chicago that he was oppressing black people by working for racial integration. He recited several verses of scripture to support his view that the Bible forbids the mixing of races. He also said that the black ministers were big shots. They got a big car, big expensive clothes, expensive what's the rhetorics? Y'all help me with that. Expensive rhetorics, he said. They get money and get drunk. They feed themselves and not the flock, he added. He said he had given Mr. Chenault a series of tapes. That he had made for a radio program designed to express his ideas on black ministers. He added that Mr. Chenault had brought several friends on 3 visits. Mr. Chenault brought several friends on 3 visits, but he had not heard from him for about 5 months. He said he had talked to the Federal Bureau of Investigation at length about Mr. Chenault when agents came to see him last Sunday night. Mr. Israel, a thin black man who wears a faded square hat and with the Star of David, said he first became interested in the Old Testament while walking the street corner. Interested in Old Testament while walking the street corner. While talking with street corner preachers in Chicago. All right. So evidently there was an Old Testament only Israelite camp on the streets in Chicago. A lot of this stuff, it seems like a lot of this one West Israelism is not. We might have to stop calling it one West Israelism because it didn't start there. All right. They just put a New Testament spin on it, and they added Latinos, and Native Americans. Okay, that's pretty much, they kind of just remixed it a little bit, added the Latinos, the Native Americans, and added in a little New Testament, a little bit. I ain't gonna say a little bit. They added some New Testament, but it was started off a black only, Old Testament only, um, pretty much black Judaism. I was in the library during the Korean War. He said he helped several young black men gain status as conscientious objectors. It was at that time, he said, that God revealed to him the plight of the black people, in that he began to spend long days at the Carnegie Library in Chicago. They got all kind of typos in here. There, with the books piled around him, he recalled, and back then, you had typewriters. It was over with. wasn't no going back and deleting that. You could put some white out on it and try to fit. But yeah, man, it was over with once you wrote that stuff in there. There were books piled around him. He recalled the first he developed his ideas on the Bible. He said he moved to Dayton in 1958 and placed newspaper advertisements directed at blacks. One ad said, "What every Negro should know concerning the scripture. This information is an uncovery of the greatest mystery, the best kept secret in the world today." He recalled that a small number of people replied, and that he had become disappointed about spreading his teachings, and was delighted to find people as avid as Mr. Chenault. Okay, so Mr. Chenault seen the ad and he called in. But since '58, he's been putting his ad out here, and it ain't really been jumping. He was kind of disappointed at this thing, so he's seen these brothers in Chicago in the '50s. He's seen these brothers in Chicago in the '50s with this particular teaching. He recalled that a small number of people. He recalled that a small number of people replied that he was okay, but he added, "It is not normal to take my teaching so quick." Let's look at the other part here. All right, and this is another article here. That's dealing with some of Chenault's actual teaching. Follower of Chenault says present day events are all explained in the Bible. Okay, that was talking about the spiritual leader. Now we finna talk about Chenault and his some of the people that was following him, because he pretty much started his own camp. Dayton, Ohio, July 6th. Everything is predetermined. There's nothing you can do about it. It was all written 2,000 years ago. With the words, Walter B. Brooks, a follower of Marcus Wayne Chenault, attempted to explain why he feels there's little uncertainty about the present or the future. One has only to observe the present time and then find the proper scripture in the Bible to determine the meaning of the event and how it will work itself out, Mr. Brooks said. Mr. Brooks is one of 4 young men and 2 women in an informal religious group that followed Mr. Chenault, now being held in Atlanta in the killing of Miss Martin Luther King Sr., mother of late civil rights leader. Interview here, his and Mr. Chenault's hometown. Mr. Brooks gave an example of the sign of the truth. Okay, they've been preaching the truth since the 50s, before One West. That he maintained made every event obvious once the truth was grasped. He said that when he and Mr. Chenault watched President Nixon on television riding in a limousine through the streets of Egypt, he was to them transformed into Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, riding in a chariot through his kingdom, doomed to destruction by God. All you have to do is look around, said Mr. Brooks, a 21-year-old former Ohio State University student, while sitting Thursday in the living room of Hananiah, Israel. I saw all things myself on TV and even in the music. He, as well as the 3 other young men, had been introduced to the truth by Mr. Chenault, who late last spring was instructed by Mr. Israel, a 69-year-old, again instructed by Mr. Hananiah Israel, a brother who first came into this truth by seeing some street preachers, Old Testament only street preachers out there in the Chicago streets teaching. 69-year-old man who spent his last 25 years reinterpreting the Bible from a black perspective. The other male followers are Harvey Cox Jr., 22, who dropped out of Blitz College last fall and now is unemployed. Ronald Scott, 19, a cousin of Mr. Chenault, who graduated from high school this spring, and his brother Robert Scott, 22, who works in a local foundry. The women members are Almeida Water, a student at the University of Dayton, and Ramona Caitlin, a former student at Ohio State University. This informal group is what news accounts in the Daytona Journal referred to as the Troop, which Mr. Brooks was quoted as saying was devoted to killing black ministers and civil rights leaders. Mr. Brooks said that the group had never given itself a name. He said that when he spoke of the truth, the Dayton reporter misunderstood him to be saying the troop. All right, he was saying the truth. But they thought it was the troop, so they named his group the Troop. And said this was a group that was out here to kill black ministers. The Justice Department said Thursday that the Federal Bureau of Investigation had made an evaluation of the evidence and concluded that there was no conspiracy in the shooting of Miss King. Mr. Brooks, the FBI went in there. They looked at everything. They said, well, no, he just did this on his own. You can't get this wasn't something planned by Hananiah Israel. He just gave him some information. This brother went out here and did this on his own. Mr. Brooks, a tall, slim black youth with broad shoulders who starts his day with a breakfast of 2 ounces of honey, said that Mr. Chenault never preached violence. Such preaching was unnecessary, he explained, because a black God who was capable of both giving life and killing would carry out the prophecies that were written in the Bible. The prophecies of Jeremiah, who predicted the downfall of Babylon for following false prophets and subjugating the Israelites, are seen by the followers of Mr. Chenault as referring to the United States. All right, they're flipping the Jeremiah prophecies of Babylon. They're flipping that to the United States, which a lot of us do today. It is not necessary for us to do anything, Mr. Brooks said. It's all laid out in the Bible. One of the prophecies of Jeremiah in chapter 51, verse 23 reads, I will also break in pieces with thee the shepherd and his flock. I will also break in pieces with thee. Who is the thee? The shepherd and his flock. To the group whose members sometimes refer themselves as Israelites, and all of whom have adopted Israel as their last religious name. You know who does this today? IUIC. Once you want to become a member and you want to put on that purple cape, all those brothers' name is Israel. All of them changed their name. Man, you can't have your slave master's name and you can't have that, And I kind of fell into that myself. I want to be up here with Brother Phineas. You know what I'm saying? But my government is Anthony King. All right. Government's Anthony King. You could go ahead and dox me. If you want to dox me and look me up, you can look me up. I have been to jail. I actually went to jail for a $12 check. I'll tell y'all that story another time. It'll be for another lesson. But anyway, to the group whose members sometimes refer to themselves as Israelites, and all of whom have adopted Israel as their last religious name. This meant the inevitable destruction of black ministers who they felt were exploiting black people and keeping them from the truth. Y'all. Come on, y'all. You can't tell me you can't tell me you're not really like this ain't no coincidence. This thing has not changed. Our leaders aren't thinkers. We're just regurgitating this information. And then up here talking about like we the greatest people on earth. Ain't nobody taught this Bible like so and so. It's like, bro, what are you talking about? All he's doing is copying what regurgitating what's been spoken for the last 70, 80 years. And then we don't want to even talk about these people. We want to say that these people crazy. But we may have to go back and start talking to these folks. And they, they Old Testament only. That's a little rough, but some of these prophecies, we're reading the Old Testament just like they're reading it. And that's problematic. All right, we're reading it the same way they are reading it. To a group whose members sometimes refer to themselves. I know y'all saying, well, what's wrong with that? It's because, we some of these things have been fulfilled through Christ. All right, so some of these prophecies we're not looking at through the same lens. This meant the inevitable destruction of black ministers who felt they were exploiting black people and keeping them from their truth. Mr. Brooks and Mr. Cox in several interviews said that Mr. Chenault had never asked them to take action, had never spoken about action that he would take himself to carry out his prophecy. Mr. Chenault, he recalls, said that one only had to wait and the destruction would be carried out by God. The members of the group had been meeting irregularly since last November in Mr. Schultz's parents' house. Later, when the parents became upset at their son's ideas, the group began to meet at the boom of one of Mr. Brooks' girlfriends at the home. At the home of Mr. Brooks, one of Mr. Brooks' girlfriends. Mr. Brooks was a player. Was Mr. Brooks a polygamist? Were they teaching poly back then? Probably so. Mr. Brooks said that Mr. Chenault urged them to reach their own interpretation of the Bible by using the Bible. All right, got to use the Bible to determine the Bible. A dictionary and encyclopedia, a technique taught by Mr. Israel, okay? Mr. Israel taught them how to use the encyclopedia and use a Bible. I meant in a dictionary. Probably didn't have I don't know. May not have had a concordance back then. I'm sure they did. Because I got a lexicon that dates back way earlier than that. So I'm sure there was some kind of concordance back then. Had to be. They also gave up eating pork and fowl. Is that chicken? Pork and chicken? They fasted to purify their bodies. They spoke about the truth even when they went out to dances, parties, and football games. Mr. Brooks said that it gave them a sense of closeness. When they were ridiculed by others, he said, they particularly, Mr. Chenault, would cite Bible quotations that forecast the doom of their opponents. So when people said they were crazy, Mr. Chenault would go out and he would quote certain Bible verses to say, this is why you're going to die. And the Most High gonna kill you niggers. Excuse me, y'all. The main thing that Mr. Israel said he taught Mr. Chenault was to reach his own interpretations, and Mr. Chenault in turn passed this on to his followers. Mr. Brooks, who had converted both of his girlfriends to the truth, gave an example of the technique, citing the passage in the Bible and saying that the heritage of Esau would be laid waste for the dragons. In the Old Testament, watch how this brother break this thing down now and tell me this ain't the one west. I don't know why my nose itching like that. I put this oil on my beard and then I mess around and touch my nose and it's over with. Something about them sensors in the nose that just get it's like it's tingling. Mr. Brooks, who converted both of his girlfriends to the truth, gave an example of the technique, citing a passage in the Bible saying that the heritage of Esau would be laid waste for the dragons. In the Old Testament, Esau and Jacob were the twin sons of Isaac and Rebekah. Esau, the firstborn, was his father's favorite, but Jacob, by impersonating Esau, got the blessing from his blind father to be the chosen one. And this is just funny how you got an opportunity. But again, these Old Testament only, so they not gonna teach the gospel. Mr. Israel says that Esau was the father of the white race. Mr. Israel says that Esau was the father of the white race. Okay, this ain't a one West Israelite doctrine. This might have came from the commandment keepers, which is to be destroyed. And Jacob fathered the black race, which is destined to be saved. Mr. Brooks looked up the word dragon in the encyclopedia and found that it was a symbol of China. Okay, and so now they say dragon is a symbol of China, just like Hebrew Israelism would say that the eagle is a sign of the United States. They're using some of the same methodology. And from this, he interpreted that the present-day society built by the sons of Esau will be taken over by China. All right, and a lot of Israelites won't disagree with that. You know, Temu, Alibaba, these little drones floating around everywhere. Remember the little, you tried to say it was weather balloons or something like that? It was some drones. Anyway, he said that that process had already begun by the influx of imports that from the Far East, such as soy sauce from Japan. You know, they were just talking about the soy sauce coming in, but now pretty much everything is being coming in from China. I don't know about Japan. I don't know why he put Japan in there with the China thing. But anyway, it had been modernized, Mr. Brooks said, but the same system, Babylon of the Bible, is still there. It will fall. Babylon will fall. And you know, that's pretty much the doctrine here. Well, we'll get back to this. We'll come back to this. All right, let's go ahead and go to the video here. Man, we already at 26 minutes. I know I done lost 70% of y'all. But
in no way.
For those
everyone, please listen. Insinuating the two gentlemen I'm talking to.
Y'all type 1 in the chat. Y'all hit the comments and say, man, we still with you. So I can salute those, man. So I can know. I can know who's still with me 27 minutes in. Hit the comments and tell me you still with me. We still with you, Brother Phoenix. We still watching.
Or, secretly, doing the same thing. I'm not saying in no way.
Now, what we watching here is, again, this is the brother Hananiah E. Israel taught, Mr. Chenault and them, they had their little incident in his followers, but he did end up getting more followers. And this could have, raised him up a little bit, got him a little more clout. You know what I'm saying? Because he's not the only one that thought like this. He learned this from somewhere else. He's like, man, we got a good brother down there in Cincinnati trying to spread this thing. And people eventually came. These brothers' teacher came and they started this particular school. They've been teaching, and they're still Old Testament only, Negro only. And down with Esau.
Everyone, please listen. Insinuating the two gentlemen I'm talking to are, secretly, doing the same thing. I'm not saying, or that they're affiliated or that they're cool with that. I'm not saying anything like that. I am asking them questions. My questions probably are especially for, and I know they're not necessarily in the best position to answer. I also,
and y'all can watch this whole video here. Go to Vocab's channel, House of Israel, Cincinnati. See if you can search for that. Vocab interviews House of Israel, Cincinnati.
I want to respect that about Hananiah, Israel. And the reason why I say they're not in the best position is because they're sort of a generation removed. They're too young to really be able to say that. But they're saying what they know, and I want everyone to understand that I believe these are men of integrity who are saying what they know. And so there's not some between the lines type of thing going on here. And I appreciate the responses, and I take them at face value. And I want everyone to understand that. With that being said, there's one other thing, byline, Dayton, Ohio, July 7th from the New York Times. I didn't realize I had this.
How bad, y'all?
Caught while you were speaking, not from what you said, I'm saying, but as I was going through this to say, okay, what else might be of value? Because it actually gets into even a scriptural interpretation. This is under the section of the newspaper article called A Move to Dayton. And here's what it says. Then Mr. Chenault heard of Mr. Israel and met the old man in Cincinnati in March 1973. The student made several trips to see Mr. Israel, taking Mr. Brooks and other friends with him to discover the truth. So I thought that was significant. Often the session was taped so that Mr. Chenault could take the tapes back to Columbus, that's where I'm from, Columbus, Ohio, to study them. He made numerous phone calls to Mr. Israel to continue the discussions or ask for interpretations.
I seen elsewhere where they were saying sometimes, like 7 days before he actually did this, he got like a citation for playing the tapes out loud out his window.
The truth was a curious literal interpretation of the Old Testament. Whatever the problem, the answer was to be found in the Old Testament as interpreted by Mr. Israel. Now, of course, these are secular people trying to write about religious beliefs, so take that with a grain of salt, everybody, but let's continue on. Mr. Israel taught Mr. Chenault that the problems of blacks were traceable to false prophets, ministers, and civil rights leaders. For example, and this is the main part I wanted to look at, Mr. Israel counseled that black ministers had deceived black people, and Zechariah chapter 13 verse 3 declares, quote, "And it shall come to pass that when any shall yet prophesy, then his father and his mother that begat him shall say unto him, Thou shalt not live." Mr. Israel told Mr. Chenault in a tape-recorded interpretation that the verse meant that when God established a black kingdom, some of the false prophets, the ministers, would sneak back in, but both father and mother, this is a quote now, but quote, both father and mother will be the first to kill them because they will not want to go through the hell we've been living in for 400 years, end quote. Mr. Chenault tested his new philosophy on friends and family. Now, this is important to understand that, just like you said, he had some issues. Most people rejected it, so I'm going to read this next line to be fair. Most of them rejected it outright and never took seriously his threats against black ministers, and he even met resistance at his home there. But the reason I say that is, if this is true and accurate, they're saying it's recorded, you could see how there is some kind of a connection, because this is basically death to black pastors, death to civil rights leaders. In the case of King's father, he would sort of fit the bill of both, because we know that was the real target. Now, I understand you can only speak what you know, and I also understand, from my understanding, really, that he's not even properly understood as the founder of your particular congregation, because that was a gentleman who left. So I want everyone to understand that Hananiah is not even the founder of House of Israel that we're speaking on. Now, he seems to be the first or one of the first people to bring this information to Cincinnati, but that doesn't mean he's the founder of this particular congregation. Again, I want everyone to be clear about that. So with that preface, last thing on the Chenault thing, and then maybe we can move on to some other stuff, but I'd love to hear what you have to say about that, either of you gentlemen.
Yes, and the only thing I would like to say again, once again, I hadn't heard any tapes. I don't know of any tapes. I hear the New York Times quoting a lot of things, and we do have a lot of people in our Israelite community that came under the teachings of Hananiah, and so
he said he don't know about no tapes. He don't have no tapes. Maybe the FBI says they have the tapes, and they're quoting some of the information that were on the tapes in another article.
we're not
There's several articles on this.
uh, oblivious to the things he taught and the people he taught and the inspiration that he had in our community. As I stated before, I don't know how much firsthand knowledge you can get other than being there
Right.
from one of the teachers that taught with him. And all the people that I know in our community, not only they don't believe this thing that Chenault did came from Hananiah, but this is not how they describe Hananiah, Israel, period. And as I stated before, the one that I come up under, who founded the House of Israel, never, ever. He did and I wish I can find it, and it's a possibility that I made. It was on Reel to Reel, and our beloved teacher brought the Reel to Reel to class for us to hear the interview that he himself did on Reginald Chenault. Because once that happened, many of the newspapers and news agencies came to Cincinnati, as you were stating, and that is true. They interviewed a lot of the people in the Israelite community, and one of those individuals was my teacher. And
And his teacher, he's saying that his teacher, so I might have twisted it up. He's saying his teacher was also interviewed, um, because he was part of that Hananiah Israel. Um, he was part of that community.
his interview was in 1972. I heard it personally, and if it's still available, I will be glad to share that with everybody. But nobody, everyone that I know that came under the spiritual teachings of Hananiah, none of these people did any of that or were violent or took that same position. So I don't know why this position was taken by Chenault and why he did. I only can go by what he said.
Right.
And he said this was a
And really, we just watching this video to determine uh, was Chenault actually, under Hebrew Israelism? Did he know he was an Israelite? Did he know the truth? Um, and you see some of his followers even saying that, we didn't say that we were called the troops, but we said we were in the truth. So it's kind of cut and dry for me, but just I put this information out there for historical reasons, and a lot of us don't understand these things, and to look back into how this thing has developed, and how it's developing, even now, even current.
vision from the Most High, and I believe that vision was false. And just real quick, Moray Isha,
And he's saying, hey man, I think all of us heard these same teachings, and none of us went out here and did nothing crazy like that. We feel like he got a revelation from, he had his own revelation that he said he received from God, and it was a false revelation.
wanted to share information on that.
Hallelujah. And you kind of brought out some of it in the article that you expounded on, but the Reginald Chenault, and this is where the article is a little inaccurate. Reginald Chenault and the others in Dayton, Ohio, then that's exactly where they were. They were in Dayton, Ohio, and they actually heard of Hananiah through tape recording. They only sat before Hananiah about twice.
Okay.
And so most of what they knew of Hananiah and his teachings came from tape recordings. And Reginald Chenault was the one giving most of the interpretation to himself and his followers. And he himself took it upon himself to go and do these things. And he referenced Hananiah, but he was not under Hananiah as Moreh Elisha was. He did not sit in his classes. He did not learn from him as our teacher Moreh Elisha did. And this is why Hananiah didn't support what he did, nor did Elisha, nor did anyone in Cincinnati at that time.
So I appreciate that, Ishia. So what? Let me see if I got this right. You were saying, yes, he learned. We would probably disagree about this part, but I'll just put it this way: learned he was an Israelite from Hananiah, and was introduced to some basic things. But he's only meeting him a few times. He's got tape recordings. But then when he's playing these for people in Dayton, a city also which I'm somewhat familiar with, being a Columbus, Ohio boy, when he's playing these, he essentially is sort of acting as an interpreter for what Hananiah said, but he's not properly interpreting him. He's sort of interpreting to him his own version, which is not really what Hananiah is saying. And so then you sort of have a sort of an unreliable conduit by which this stuff is going, and it's Chenault, and his interpretations are they're
But from what we're hearing from his followers, sound pretty accurate. You know, sound pretty much like what's being taught today. Don't sound too off to me. And I'm pretty sure that was on them tapes. But y'all had nothing to do with it. The FBI didn't say you had nothing to do with it. Nobody else was charged in it. So you don't even have to prove that. I don't even know why they went on vocab to prove to say that they're not involved in it. He got the tapes. He learned from the tapes. He learned a little bit from Hananiah. He got into this truth. He was bug out. It went crazy.
You of what Hannah.
Oppressor make of a wise man mad. And of course that's not how that mad that mad is not angry. That mad means like insane or crazy. That's the language. Back in that time, and man, I had to do a verse. I had to do a video, and I think I have done a video on this on some of the King James, and somehow some of these words mean the exact opposite. Just because words change, and that show you that modern translations have changed those words back to mean what they mean, and I do a comparison on some of those things so that y'all can see that. But mad doesn't mean angry. Mad in that Old Testament English, not Old Testament English, but that Old King's English means crazy. You've gone mad.
And I was saying because, and again, even reading the article, even if it was accurate, even from that, it didn't really say, just from that little article, Hananiah then was telling Chenault, do this now, or this is your responsibility. He, well, I believe in, so if a Christian is expounding, say, on the book of Revelation, I know you wouldn't hold that, but you wouldn't have to be Revelation. Revelation, of course, quotes the Old Testament a lot and says, this is what God is going to do. That doesn't mean they're saying, you go out now and destroy wicked or something like that. So I'm trying to meet you. Sorry if that was a little long, but it seems like that's what you're saying. And I think something that I'm getting from Ishaiah, more Ishaiah as well, is you didn't literally say this, but something along the lines of, well, let me ask that. I think you guys probably feel like because of this act back then that's not even directly connected to you, that Israelites in Cincinnati have been sort of besmirched, with something that's not really, that shouldn't be laid at their feet, I think is something also that I'm getting as a general sense. Sorry if that's two questions, but response to that.
Yeah, and not that it should not be laid at our feet. We welcome the question. It's just like the reason why we're talking today with you is because the video you said that the violence of the House of Israel Cincinnati. And if people run with that, that's what they will believe. That's what they will get out of it. That's what they would interpret. So we here just to make the record straight on that. And so just like,
So they're answering vocab because vocab made a video prior saying the violence of the house of Israel, and this is one incident that they connected to, but then they had two kind of current situations that were in that community that were going on, that were pretty bad. You know what I'm saying? I recorded, but I didn't put it in here. If y'all go and watch the interview, you'll see. I want to say it's like I don't even want to speculate and get it wrong, and then they trying to pull me up and want me to do an interview with them, and I had to sit down and apologize because I said it wrong. But they had a couple of people that were formerly in the organization that were locked up for some pretty serious situations. And this would kind of made him do the video.
like the Chenault situation, we don't have to be first-hand encounters. All we have to do is look at the truth. And at the end of the day, many of the things that he learned, Hananiah might have talked about black pastors. We talk about Christianity and Islam and those that believe in.
And I'm gonna tell you, if you feel like going and watching that interview, vocab already got these brothers lined up, banging on Esau, talking about you know, death to our oppressors and da 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 in rap music. And it's another thing too, and we'll end on this. That vocab is nobody. He's no judge. Um, but he is judging them on the merits of their music and what you're saying in that music. And this is just another message for Israel, that you better be careful what you're putting inside of this music that y'all doing out here, where you're carrying guns and you talking crazy. These things, if you ain't learned nothing from these rappers in the last 5 years, these lyrics will be brought up against you. That will be held against you. I advise you to take all that mess down. It's trash anyway. I advise you to take it down. But who gonna listen to Brother Phoenix? Again, pray this thing was edifying. Y'all be blessed. Y'all shalom. We'll see y'all on the next one.